Um, are you, and give me a thumbs up, Patience, because I see, seems like you're having technical issues or something. Oh, she's not in. Oh, no, she is in. I see her. Okay. All right. So today we are in chapter 7. As I indicated, today we are in chapter 7, and we're going to be talking about resumes. Hopefully, a quick thumbs up for those of you that have set your appointment. You guys saw how to do that yesterday. Any questions on that? Yeah, every campus is different. So hopefully you notice that, some campuses they have a little online system that you use. Other campuses want you to call them. So please make sure you're doing that. Remember, they need to review this resume and get it signed off on so you can turn it in next week. All right. So let's get into chapter 7 so we can go ahead and round out the week. We'll talk about resumes. Many of you, raise your hand if you have a resume. I'm sure many of you have done one before if you have had a job that required you to do one. So I see a few. Good. So someone did have a good question yesterday about what happens if I already have a resume. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in this course, but if you already have a resume, you'll still want to meet with career services because they have to sign off on it. They keep your resume on file. When they engage with potential employers, which is really important for those of you that are graduating, they'll send over your resume. I know every campus is different, so I can't speak for every campus, but what I've seen at some places, the career services person will send over your resume if they feel like you're a good candidate for a job. So it's important for them to have the right resume on file. Exactly. And it needs to be a resume that they've reviewed, because when they're working with these potential employers, whether it's an externship or an actual job, they need to send the right resume over. So don't hoard your resumes thinking, oh, I already have a resume. They need to see it. They need to sign off on it to make sure it's one that they can promote. It's one that has the information on it. And we talked about this yesterday, that companies want to see. So hopefully you understand why that's important. They have the job description to some of these jobs. They know what the company is looking for on these resumes. So it's important that they see your resume and sign off on it. Now, like I've stated, you can have several resumes, but the one for this class, you want career services to sign off on so they can keep it, and that becomes your official resume just for this program. Right now, you can have 1,000 other resumes, at home, doing your own thing with. All right. Hopefully we understand long-term goals. You're going to be writing those long-term goals. Again, make sure that with your discussion posts, you're not saying, I agree. Please don't copy and paste, right? And last thing is I did have a question about who am I doing the mock interview with? Hopefully by now you guys understand that it's with career services. It's not with me. Your resume and your mock interviews are not with me, but they're with your respective career services personnel. All right. So let's get into chapter 7. In chapter 7, we'll talk about the ins and outs of a resume. And I'm going to hopefully share something with you that I either hope that you know, or if you don't know, at least it's something that you'll learn about resume writing that you didn't know before, because it is more than just writing out a paragraph about what you've done. It's much more than that. What it is it's a written document of your qualifications, yes, your experience and your education, but more importantly, it's designed. Did somebody come off mute? Not sure. Okay, it's designed for you to showcase your skill set. So when I personally write a resume, and because every resume writer is different, please defer to your career services person. But when I personally write a resume, after I write like a job that I've had, let's say I'm writing that I was an instructor, I'm an instructor for Southern Tech. I'll put like a snippet of what I do, but right underneath that little snippet of what I do as a faculty member for Southern Tech, I'll write what I call 3 bullet points that talks about successes, right? We call them PAR statements. Your career services may call them something different, but it's where you talk about a problem, an action, and a result. So I may say something like, received students had a 95% pass rate over the past 3 quarters in my SLS program. What does that mean? That means I had students. The problem is not obvious, but it's like, did they pass or fail? And I'm saying that they had a 95% success rate in my particular course. What does that show? Well, what that's saying is, yeah, well, she's not just a instructor, she's an instructor with a high success rate. A lot of mistakes that people make when they do their resume is you just give like a snippet of the job description. That tells what you do, but it doesn't tell how well you did it. So how are they to know between you and someone else who's the better candidate? The candidate that's putting these success statements in their resume is going to get looked at a little bit more keenly than someone else is just saying, oh, I teach for a living. Okay, if you teach for a living and that person teaches for a living, how do I know which one is better? The person that is able to articulate how well they teach is the one that's going to raise eyebrows. So I'm always encouraging people, don't just do a laundry list of what you've done at a company to say, oh yeah, you want someone that knows how to weld? Yeah, I know how to weld. No, tell them how well you've done it. Did you work on a major project? Did you have to, do something within a certain deadline? Were you able to assist, with a problem that you had to have them fix, right? Try to say something in 1 or 2 bullet points that separates you, makes you unique from the other candidate. So that's important, at least when I do resumes. Another key piece too is making sure that when you are applying for a job that you're paying attention to the job description. One of the reasons why we have you guys go out and do those, reviews of job descriptions, look at their hard skills, look at their technical skills, look at what they're asking you to be able to have as a qualification. And then remembering if you've done any of that stuff, whether it's a soft skill like teamwork, customer service, or a technical skill, make sure it's in your resume, because a lot of companies utilize these software applications, which we'll talk about in a minute, that reviews resumes. And if you don't have those keywords in your resume, then the system will automatically bump your resume, especially if you're applying to a company that's a big company. They're using these software applications, and I have mixed reviews about it, but I guess I understand it. With technology now, companies are getting hundreds and hundreds of resumes, so they have to have a way to go through them faster, but you also want to be efficient. And I don't think the applications are the most efficient way to do it, the software applications, but it's neither here nor there. Every company's going to do what they want to do. So the best thing that you can do is to ensure that you're using those keywords as much as possible, so the system will pick up on your resume. It will trigger it, and then it just puts it in to the next phase, right? So what are some of those keywords? You may see things like, they want you to be able to read blueprints. They want you to be able to install certain things. Make sure that you can do, if you're a welder, obviously this is a welding job posting, you can do things like MIG, TIG, and stick welding, definitely operating the equipment, right? And so look here how it talks about manual or semi-automatic equipment. That's something you may want to definitely pinpoint, right, in your resume, because you don't want to overlook some of these key words. Does that make sense? Safety is going to be a big one probably for all of you guys too. Make sure you're talking about safety somewhere, whether it's, and I know it's kind of difficult if you've never done the job before, right? We know that. But one trick that I tend to do is, even if I've never been a welder, but I was responsible for some type of safety protocol in a job, then I'll find a way to work that into one of my jobs. You'd be surprised, you could have been a manager working anywhere. And if you had to deal with safety, then put it out there, right? Don't feel like you are exaggerating. If you dealt with it, you dealt with it. Try to put as much in your resume as possible that mirrors the job. You don't know where the keywords are, right? So you don't know what the keywords that they have put into their system. So make sure don't, even if it's a small thing like you organize workspace to ensure safety. You've done that somewhere. Put it in the system. Now, I don't know why this person is on hold. I don't know what's happening there. All right. So the system is called, like I mentioned, an automatic tracking software system. And you may have heard that term before. You may not have heard of that term. If you're not in HR, then you probably never heard of that term before. But that's what a lot of them are using, especially the companies that are on LinkedIn. I've been noticing some negative backlash about LinkedIn because LinkedIn is a global, application, and companies are getting upwards of 1,000 resumes. And the part that I hate about that, I shouldn't say hate because it's not my business, but people applying for jobs they're not qualified for, right? Am I the only one that annoys? Like, you're trying to apply for a job, and it's like, because they get 1,000 resumes and maybe 100 people are actually, qualified for it, but they have to go through 1,000 resumes, and that's one of the reasons why they started automatic tracking applications, because of that reason. Now, conversely, obviously, if you're using a global, marketplace like LinkedIn, there's going to be a lot of people that are qualified. So there you go with that too. But there are a lot of people that are not qualified, but I get it. Hey, shoot your shot. Now, with your resume, one of the top things that you'll find, and when I want to highlight this because times have changed, is the heading at the top of the resume. The book talks about putting your address. I do not recommend putting your address on your resume. Listen, this is a different time. Back in my day, it was safer. Nowadays somebody could show up at your door, especially if you're putting your resume on Indeed or LinkedIn or something like that. Do not put your address. That's my 2 cents. I would say, use, obviously, your phone number is okay, clearly, your LinkedIn website, your email, but that's about it. I would definitely not put my address there. So other than that, there you go. Obviously, you want people to be able to contact you, right? But you want to be safe as well. I've even heard of stalkers and exes, creepy stuff. Anyway, now, some people put a summary section at the top. Other people put a qualifications section. they pretty much say the same thing. I prefer a quick summary at the top, and we're going to talk about how you're going to use that next week, because you're actually using that summary in other environments that we'll discuss next week. But the summary section should be just a quick little, it's almost like an introduction to what people are going to find in your resume. It's similar to the same thing that you would put in a cover letter, but just in a shorter version. So I say put it there. I don't recommend it being more than 2 or 3 sentences, so follow your career services person's lead on that. But you definitely want to put it there, because again, maybe if it's an automated tracking system, they may pull out some words there. But a regular HR person, and I actually used to train HR people when they get certified, they may look up there to see, before I read this resume, what is this person qualified to do? So that's what this summary is really designed to do, is just to give them a brief overview. And next week, we'll talk about how it's also part of what we call your personal brand statement. Skills is another thing where, it depends on, is industry specific. Now, IT people, maybe technical people like you guys may want to have a skills section. It's not necessary. You don't want to overdo the skills section, in my opinion, because people don't need to see a bunch of, oh, I can do this, little bullet points, all these skills you have. They want to get into the work you've actually done. But skills, to me, is optional. You can or can't have it. It's really just a matter of preference. Was education, now, where I was taught is that if you don't have tons of work experience, put your education at the top. If you have tons of work experience, put your education at the bottom of the resume. Is there a place where you have to put it? No. Obviously, if you haven't done tons of the work, then I would say put it at the top, because you don't want to start getting into, obviously you all have to have a resume. None of you, unless you have a family member or you've done it on the side, have done the work you're doing now. So you're going to have to put it right at the top so they can see, oh, this person recently graduated with this. And so when they read your resume, and that's another reason why your summary is important, you can talk about, you're transitioning into this new career. That can be like a last sentence on your summary, or you can lead with that, looking to transition into a welding program, into a welding industry, from working in construction or something like that. But then put the education at the top. Now, if you've done something related to this, and you feel comfortable enough that you have enough, keywords in the jobs that you have done, then you can put your education at the bottom. It really just depends. There's no right or wrong, but follow your career services lead on that. Again, for me, the most important thing when it comes to your experience, in addition to the way it's set up, the template of it, putting your title and the year that you work somewhere, follow your career services person lead. But after you've put a brief summary of the work that you've done, I'm going to suggest that you have some type of accomplishment statements in there. That's my 2 cents. I just think it makes you stand apart. It's what I've looked at when I've ever reviewed resumes to see, okay, so what has this person done? Tell me what the job is. It's nice. But what have you done? Have you done anything specific that you feel is important enough to, stand out? So that's what I suggest, right? And we've talked about those trigger words. The format of a resume, you may have seen, and in the book, they'll talk about different types of formats, chronological. They'll talk about, actually forgot the other two is off the top of my head. But there's one where the chronological one is the one that people know the most, is where you talk about your most recent job description, down to your previous job descriptions. They say back 10 years, but I would say, because sometimes people work one job 6, 7 years and then, then you just have one other job on there. But what if you've done the work back 20 years and it's relevant to what the position you're applying for? Then I'm gonna say go back 20 years. Like you still need to try to follow the 2-page rule. So even if that means you have to condense some of the words in some of your jobs, then I say do that because I like, for example, I worked at a pharmaceutical company when I first got in the military and it was in clinicals, right? I haven't worked in clinicals since, but the company that I was applying for was like, okay, have you ever done any clinicals? Well, yes, I have. It was 20 years ago, but hey, I worked in it. So I'm going to find a way to massage that thing on in there because I want to be able to apply for this job. So, even if that means I have to cut other things out or pare down a little bit on jobs because I want to put it in there, right? Because again, you don't necessarily have to, well, especially if you're the type of person like myself that have had 2 jobs at a time. Like, I don't think I've ever not had 2 jobs, even if one was full-time, one was part-time, and 2 separate industries, right? I'm not even talking about like having 2 accounting jobs. Like I've always taught, I've been teaching for 18 years, and I've always had like a full-time job somewhere else or worked as a contractor, a consultant, or something of that nature. So if I'm applying for an education job, I don't necessarily have to put in all the other stuff that I've done. I can just do straight education resume. You see what I'm saying? Or if I'm applying for a consulting job, I don't put in my education stuff, right? I'll just mention it at the bottom or take it out altogether. Like they don't really care that I've been an instructor for 18 years. It has nothing to do with the contracting work. Unless I'm applying for like a training job, then I'll massage it to where I factor that in. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So how far you go back on your resume, to me, it depends on, if you have experience in that arena or not. But they'll say try to keep your resume down to 2 pages if that's possible. Maybe for the younger people that are just starting out, yes, but older people, it gets harder and harder to do that. That's why you have to pare down there. Another reason why you have several resumes. Now, obviously a lot of companies are going to want you to send PDFs. I don't recommend sending a Word doc because the person on the other end, you don't know their skill set when it comes to technology. Once they download it, sometimes it gets manipulated, not on purpose. They could just be looking through your resume to look for keywords and they make a mistake and delete something. That does happen. I'm just telling you, or they're going to upload it into their system. So, they want to make sure that it's manipulate, they are able to manipulate it. Not like change wording, but able to put it into their system. And sometimes, the systems that they use, like the conversion software that takes the PDF and then it puts it right into a application that they're using at their company, they'll want it in PDF format. I say just go ahead and put it in PDF format before you send it out. I don't recommend you sending out a Word document. Now, some companies will say they only do Word for whatever reason. Maybe they have a system that only reads Word. Fine. But make sure you read that small print because some companies are really sticklers about that type of stuff. Again, you'll find that more so in the larger companies. These other non-traditional resumes that you may have, is besides the web-based and visual ones that the book talks about, are skill set resumes. For some reason, is I'm losing my train of thought with the name of it, but a lot of IT people use it where they put all the technical stuff that they have done, and then the companies that they worked for is not as relevant as the technical work. Now, people are getting back to the traditional chronological one, but that is also acceptable in the technical field for you to, like, for example, if I say, oh, I've done like worked with database a lot of data sets and databases. And then I talk about all the projects I've had. And then lastly, what companies I've worked for and doing it. That is very industry specific. So you want to, use your discretion on that. But you'll probably see most of your resumes done traditionally, which is the chronological. Now, lastly, with the checklist, proofread. Let me tell you, I've sent out some stuff that was not grammatically correct before, and that can be embarrassing. And it is because I'm changing things and copying and pasting from my other resumes. We've all been there, right? So, but you don't want to be that person when you send out something, then you realize it. Maybe you're checking the status of it, then you're looking like, oh my God, my cover letter said the wrong thing, or uh, God forbid it has the wrong company on there because you're applying for a lot of jobs. Like, please don't be that person. And then, I've had to say, okay, why? I see why they didn't call me back. They're probably like, okay, this is the wrong company. I've done that before. So it is important that, I know, it's very stressful when you don't have a job, or when you're very anxious to get into your industry and you have to send out resumes. Um, Let me ask you a quick question. What do you think the average number of resumes you have to send out before you land a job? I'm going to give you a range. 25 or less, give me a thumbs up, you think is average. 25. What about 50? Give me a thumbs up at 50. 50 or in between 25 and 50. Mm-hmm. Who says 50 or more? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you, it definitely depends. Like you're both right. It depends on the industry that you're in, and it depends on where you are on the food chain. I'm just being honest. If you think about a pyramid, right? So entry level jobs, there's a lot of people applying for those jobs. Makes sense? The higher up you go, the smaller the smaller the opportunities, but it's also the smaller the pool, and it also depends on your skill set. So 50 is not an uncommon number. I've sent out 100 resumes. I've sent out probably 150, maybe 200 over like a course of 3 months. Now, and I'm not be honest, because I do operate in more than one industry. Like, I can go finance, I can go contract, I can go education or nonprofit. Those are the fields I've worked in. So I tend to, definitely able to get something, but I sent out hundreds of resumes. Like, and I'm talking about stuff I'm not qualified for, stuff I'm qualified for. But I will also say this, because I work from home. So I'm one of those people that I guess the older folks hate. Those baby boomers don't really like work from home jobs for some reason, but I work from home, so that limits already the type of work I can do, right? So I have to. Now, maybe if I took jobs working on site like I used to a few years ago, then maybe I wouldn't have to send it. Maybe I'll just add 100. Even when I was working on site, my job search was a little easier, but still 75 to 100 is common. So don't feel that something's wrong with you because you're doing that. Everybody's doing it. And like I said, sometimes the competition can be stiff because there's people that are willing to travel. You may have someone in Miami talking about they'll take a job in Orlando. So the competition is stiff. So don't think anything is wrong with you because you have to send 100 resumes. Everybody does. And I got like 6, 7 degrees. Yeah, I know. Don't talk about me. And they're all industry specific, trust me. But I still got seven resume, hundreds and hundreds of resumes in order to be employed. So don't Don't think anything's wrong with you. That's what you have to do. But it can be very tiring. And that's why you can make mistakes, right? That's my point of why you can make mistakes when you're sending out 100 resumes and you have to sometimes tailor it to each job. Can you imagine? This is what wears people out. This is what makes people feel so deflated when they're on the job search. But yeah, y'all can handle it, stay strong, but make sure, that you do that checklist and there's no grammatical, right? So when it comes to professional references, I was about 2, 3 months ago, I learned that people did this horrible thing, which I can't believe that people do. I didn't know people had fake references. I'm not going to tell on you. Thumbs up if you knew about this fake references. I was 51 years old when I learned people did that. Like, what? I had someone, and this person was a professional. And she was like, yeah, I just let my ex-husband pretend to be my reference. I was like, what? First of all, I guess I had no idea people do that. Um, I've been using the same references for a minute, but it's just because, like, if I worked with someone, for a very long time and they know me, then I use them as a reference. It's always good to have a few good references, you know, and I say that because, managers come and go. You can put a manager from a company you worked at, but then that manager may not work there anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not so much about having people that you think is going to give you a great referral. It's about someone that you feel really knows the work that you do. Like, I would say I have maybe 4 people that I've used as a reference for that past 20 years because they worked with me for like a decade or, 5, 6, 7 years, and they know me, they know my work, they know the type of stuff that I do. And I trust them, right? I trust them to be able to give me a fair assessment. And then conversely, I, give them a reference. So I almost have like a reference relationship with a few people that I use, you know, and I would suggest that you do the same, someone that, have seen you really put in good work, and then conversely, you've seen them put in good work and use them as a reference, you know. With the reference, typically, you do that on a separate page. Like, you just, on your resume, you just put references upon request. Don't assume they want references, I've gotten jobs without a reference. Have said, "Oh, we like you." They'll say, "Oh yeah, we'll ask for references later." They never ask for the reference. So if you do a good enough job in the interview, the references sometimes won't even matter. But if you do have to do a reference and they are going to reach out, make sure you let your reference know that you're looking for a job. Don't have your reference person, picking up the phone or looking at an email and they're like, they didn't even know that you were looking for a job. That's not gonna be a good look. Even if you are looking for a job and you've used someone as a reference, send them a quick message about what the job is. Like, I like it when people that want me to give them a reference, they send me a quick job description and they tell me what they want me to highlight. They don't tell me what to say. We've known each other for a long time. They'll say, hey, I'm applying for this job. They're really focusing on artistic direction. Please, talk about the work that we've done together with that. I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know when the people call what to say, right? And then, they trust me to say whatever. But let the person know that you've applied for a job and someone may reach out to them because you don't want them deleting it or going to their spam or not being prepared. So, and typically it's about 3 references is what I've seen in the past. So make sure that throughout your career that you at least get your 3 good references. When I do my reference list, it kind of looks a little bit like the one they show you in the book. I don't put their addresses. I would say that again. What I typically do, I put their name. Sometimes I put the last position that they've held and their email address or their phone number if they tell me I can give it out. But mostly I just put their email address. Like, if you don't need their phone number, I put their email address, the position that they hold or currently held, previously held, and then their full name. That's what I do. Sometimes I put their company, but that's not relevant as well. I mean, I know in today's society, you just got to be careful. I don't like giving out people's personal information, unless they're okay with that. All right. Let's talk about our participation question for today, and then I also want to talk about your assignment, so don't run off too quick. Your participation question for today says, I want you to list 3 different things you learned about resumes today. Be specific. Don't put, I ain't learned nothing. Don't do that. Don't do that. Lie to me if that's the case. No, just kidding. 3 things that you learned about, and you can do it from the book. It doesn't have to be from this presentation. You can read, in the chapter 7, 3 things that you learned about resumes today. 3 different things, and even if it's something you kind of already knew, but maybe we expounded on it and it's something that you didn't previously know. All right, 3 things. And my friends, when I say 3, give me 3. Some of y'all trying to play me. You giving me 1 and 2. I'm gonna have to take off 1 and 2% of your grade. I asked for 3. Uno, dos, tres. Okay. All right. Some of my other assignments, I'll say, give me 3 different things. Give me hard skills and technical skills, then I'll get half of my work. I'm gonna give you half of the credit. I need you to give me all of it. Okay. I want was mine. All right. Lastly, your assignment, which is similar to that, ask you to do what? We talked about hard and soft skills that you have. Now we want you to go and find a job posting. Find a job posting. It says here to use the internet to locate 3 job postings in your area of interest. List the web addresses of the job postings. Don't skip over number 1. List the web addresses of the job postings, and then list the hard and soft skills. All right? Make sure you pay attention to that in that assignment. I hate taking off points. Y'all know I like to give out hundreds. I hate taking off points. I feel bad because I feel like you did the work, but you just didn't pay attention to the instructions. So please pay attention to the instructions, all right? It hurts me to hurt you. All right. That's it for today. So I'm going to stop the recording and